Andy, welcome to Audience Driven. Thanks for being here and having a chat with me today.
Pat, thanks for having me. I'm to be here.
Now, today, it's actually raining the day that I'm recording this. A lot of you who are watching this know that we record these things sort of previous to the conference, and then we bring them in. It's raining right now in San Diego, and everybody's freaking out. We don't know what to do, and it just hardly ever happens. And I see it's nice outside. You can go on a walk, so I'm glad somebody's outside today.
Yeah, it's sunny here when we're freaking out because it's never sunny here. I'm in Pennsylvania, first day at a new place.
I'm also freaking out because community has become the center of like everything right now. I'm really excited because of SPI Pro and working with you guys over at Circle. It's just been an absolute pleasure to advise your company and to use Circle and just be in there every day. Just thank you before we even get started here, just for everything you and Sid and the entire team are doing over there.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for leading the way. I mean, you guys really led the way in terms of, one of our best communities we have.
Well, we're trying, and we're always learning, and we want to learn from you today. In fact, I want to ask you a very common question we get, which is, how do you know when it's the right time to transition from a free community to a paid community? A lot of people have free communities already, small ones, big ones on Facebook, LinkedIn, even communities that could hypothetically be pulled out on Instagram and other places. But how do you know it's time to create a paid community?
Well, I think there's a couple of kind of hints you may start to get, right? So, one of them could be that people start to ask you for more, right? You're in there, you're kind of, business as usual, and people are saying, hey, can you do this? Or can you connect me with so-and-so? Or have you thought about X, Y, or Z? And, maybe you want to start to create more value and you want to be a little more hands-on or whatever it is. You have to also be able to sustain that. So that's a really nice kind of hint, is if you want to deliver more value, people are asking for more value, and then you're getting to the point where maybe one of the only ways you can do it and sustain it is if it becomes a paid part of your model.
So it's not just the, hey guys, I'm just going to charge now for everything that I've been giving away for free. We have to find something new or something additional to put in there. Can you give us some thoughts more specifically on what additional value could be included to justify having a payment come through?
Yeah. So first of all, there's probably like 40, 50 different things, right, that we might see on any given week, kind of ways you might give value in the community. And you probably only need a couple, right? You could just have one, you could have two or three, but I mean, this is everything under the sun from, maybe you have small coaching groups or member deals and discounts or mastermind groups, or maybe you have a book club, or maybe you have some way where people can kind of offer themselves up for work, different services or things they do, and get connected with clients. Or maybe you can help your folks connect with people that can offer them services. Maybe you can give people access to you. Maybe there's like this kind of knowledge that you have and you want to scale it up. Maybe you can have an area in your community where people can come and ask you questions, you answer in front of everybody. Maybe you bring in an expert from your community to teach something. Maybe that happens once a week or once every few weeks. Maybe you have one of your own members come in. Instead of going outside of your community and finding an expert from outside, maybe you bring in one of your community members to teach or share something. So there's all these different kind of options, and you'll start to bring in the folks who are in your community and ask them, like, which of these are most appealing to you? What's going to scratch the itch? And you don't have to make all the decisions yourself. You can let your members help you make the decision for how you narrow down the value props.
And that's a great callback to audience driven. I mean, just the fact that you don't have to guess sometimes. You can kind of let your audience that you're building help determine your next steps and what you're building. So I love that approach in terms of how you might be able to, number one, know when it's time to potentially start doing a paid thing. And maybe it's a small micro experiment, right? You have a free community and you might want to pull, a few of those people into one of those kinds of moments or opportunities, like you said. And then if that works out, like, hey, maybe let's do this every couple of weeks. Wow, okay, now we're going to do this for real now, but now I'm going to start charging for it. And it's already been tested and approved, if you will. So I love that approach. Thank you for that. Now, you've obviously been researching and doing a lot in community for a long time. Circle, yes, just kind of officially opened last year, which is crazy because a part of me is like, wow, that was like yesterday. But then I'm like, No, that actually feels like a long time ago too. So time is weird right now, but
Yeah.
I know that you've been focused on community for a long time. How has, in your eyes, community changed over time? Like, what was it before, and like the bare minimum of things to do, and kind of what is it now?
So one of the trends we've seen, I think, over the last, let's call it year and 9 months or so, uh,
Hmm.
is that, call it maybe a year and a half, right? When the pandemic started, at least when Circle started, people were just sitting in front of their computers all day. Like they were there. When we were talking about community, people thought of forums, they thought of you being in front of a computer, maybe spending a lot of time there. And that was a really big ask. People did it. But
Hmm.
I think what we're starting to see now is we're starting to see people think, time is a really valuable resource. What can I do to deliver a lot of value to people, give them a big transformation or help connect them with the right people, whatever it is, but with less time commitment. So, how can I reduce the scope almost of my community? Not to deliver less value, but so that I can deliver more value. And that's a trend we've seen where people go back out into the real world now. They're busy, they might go to an actual office, but maybe there's a way where now I can kind of just like choose like what's the most impactful thing I can do and just do that one thing or those two or three things
Hmm.
in a concise amount of time. And I think that's a big trend we're seeing. Circle didn't start out that way. At least the communities on Circle weren't that way.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. That reminds me of like a computer chip, right? Powerful computer chips back in the day were just bigger, right? And now they're getting actually smaller and smaller, but more and more powerful. Things are able to move faster inside of that smaller space, and things are more efficient that way. And I think you're right. I think that we've all realized it's similar to like even online courses, right? And you having come from Teachable probably knows this as well, where online courses back in the day were about just let's put as many hours of video in there as possible. And that's what was valuable. And now it's actually quite the opposite. The sooner I, as a course student, can get a result, the more valuable this thing is, because now I get some time back and I can implement and do these things. And I definitely love that analogy with communities and courses. So what would be a way for, you'd mentioned some of these things already when we answered the last question, but maybe what are one or two of the best ways to do that, to make a community more efficient, or just that much stronger, especially for those who potentially have communities already, and they're trying to make them better and more valuable without putting more content into it, for example.
Yeah. Well, there can certainly be communities where you're, as the person leading it, creating a lot of that content. But the best communities, you asked a question. Like, let's say for me, I'm in a community and I'm trying to learn how to become an amazing gardener. And
Hmm.
I joined this community because the leader of the community, maybe I followed them somewhere else or I built a relationship, whatever it was, right? But when I come in, I kind of just want to know, like, if I want to know how to lay an amazing flower bed, like, I just kind of want to know the answer. And as long as I trust the answer, that's good enough for me. So, as an example, if we want to reduce the time, rather than me waiting for a creator or somebody to share something with me, like, what if I just asked a question and I can get answers from other people in the community within
Hmm.
minutes or within the hour? That I think is a more sustainable approach. Your members might get help quicker, right? But kind of more like bottoms up community
Yeah.
building versus it being like just one leader that everybody follows at the top. That's not really what most of the successful communities that we see are. Did that answer your question, Pat?
Yeah, no, it did. That brought a secondary question, which is value comes from the utility of the community, right? And Circle provides the skeleton and the ability for amazing utility to happen, but you still have to, in some ways, train or teach a person and get them comfortable to interact. If a person comes into a community and they're just kind of watching from the sidelines, it's obvious that it's not going to, likely be something they're going to be in there uh, consuming and participating, and they're not going to, stick around for a while. So, how, in your mind, would be the best way to get a person to just really start getting comfortable using it and asking questions, because it's when that happens, like you said, that value comes in much sooner.
Nobody does this better than the SPI Pro community, but you when people first come into these communities, they're kind of wondering like, you know, what should I do? Do I like post
Mhm.
somewhere? What's kind of the etiquette here? How do I get value? Where is the value? Do I know anybody? And so what we suggest is kind of have like a tight onboarding process where when folks come in, you take all of the ambiguity out for them. You just tell them, here's exactly what I want you to do. I want you to do these like 5 or 6 things. And those things can be things that get them familiar with the tool, get them familiar with the people that are there, get them introduced, get them to get some type of like positive reinforcement and some initial value, so
Mhm.
that when they come in, instead of just like judging you and trying to figure out like, hey, is this community going to be worth my time? You just prove it to them in the first 20 minutes that they're on the platform. And by the way, like incentivize them at the end. And even you do this in the SPI Pro community, fill out this form, and we'll give you a cool gift, or we'll add this badge to your profile, or send us a DM and we'll give you this thing. And you're just kind of creating this a loop where it's like people don't have to guess what to do. You just tell them and then they figure it out from there.
For sure. I mean, I talk about this in my book, Superfans, the idea of the small, quick win, right? It's very similar to how you might start a video game, like a really good video game that you know you're going to be immersed in for a while. It doesn't start typically with you just kind of sitting there and you kind of have to figure things out on your own. It, even if it's an expansive world, even if it's a very complicated game, they'll usually walk you through a tutorial, but it's not an instruction manual. It's, you are doing things while you're learning. And I think we can
Right.
approach our communities in sort of same way, for sure. So we talked about sort of the trends of communities. I'd love for you to even forecast a little bit in terms of, well, where do you think communities are headed? What are communities like a year from now, 2 years from now? What is maybe on the front edge or leading edge right now that may become something normal for us in a couple of years, so we can get ahead on things?
So I think where we're headed is that we're going to have timely, like problems we're trying to solve. We're going to have uh, interests that are very specific to us. There's going to be like the long tail of
Mhm.
different types of communities, and we'll be pretty engaged in 3 or 4 or 5 of them at any given time. And we'll rotate in and out of them. We'll join a community, but it won't be forever. It'll be for a few months. It'll be for maybe even, a month or 2. Maybe it'll be for 12 months. And I would imagine that like you said, communities with utility, they'll play a really big role. And they're also, I think, we're not going to think of like these big communities with tens of thousands of people all the time. We're going to think of like the smaller, tight knit ones where I know people and I build
Mhm.
relationships and connections. And that those will be the ones that we kind of like seek out.
I think that from a consumer and community member perspective, for sure. From a content creator and a community creator's perspective, that leads me to believe that perhaps if we have this sort of larger audience, or sort of like one-stop community, if you will, that will eventually have to evolve if we want to keep people into potentially smaller pockets within that community, or maybe even higher levels or tiers, right? So a person can find within the groups. I mean, and we even see this in SPI Pro. There's pockets of people who are in Europe who all want to connect with each other. There are pockets of
Right.
people who are, on the East Coast who all want to connect with each other. And some of them are connecting in person, which is really amazing. But if we want to keep people in our communities, we might need to think about how might we get even more specialized within our community, have people who should definitely know each other, find each other. And I think that's where Circle really plays an amazing role, especially with the member directory sort of releasing and all these other things that allow for findability to uh, allow for these amazing connections to happen. Because as we often hear, people come for either the creator or the content, but why they stick around is for the community. And I think I can envision exactly what you said happening, and hopefully we can create multiple mini communities to make up one larger whole, right? You have Disneyland, but some people want to be in Fantasyland, some people want to be in Adventureland,
Yep.
some people want to be in Tomorrowland, but it's all there because you are Walt, and then you have your characters and the experience. I mean, that's why Disney is so great. And they're actually switching to a membership model. Did you know that?
No, are they really?
Yeah. So they had like annual passes for a while and they got rid of it during the pandemic. And now they're coming in with like a monthly subscription service situation to bring people in. And so like now even Disney's going in memberships. And of course they also had sort of recurring income come in from Disney Plus and other things like that. And that's not necessarily community per se, but I think that I think you're right. I think and I know Circle allows for that to happen, to have specific spaces for certain people, and even secondary Circle communities like we have SPI Academy in addition to SPI Pro. So I can definitely see that happening. What would be your recommendation should we head down that direction, to just keep organized, because things are going to evolve. We're going to want to continue to pack more things in. But any final words of advice for people creating community who want to stay sane while doing it?
I view starting off small as an advantage, not a disadvantage. And everybody is different. I'll tell you my perspective is, if I was starting a community from scratch, I would be scoping it down. Like I would be taking a lot of pressure off myself. I wouldn't be expecting tons of people just talking all day long. Like, your community doesn't have to be like the destination where people are spending all of their time. I would try and find what are the 2 or 3 things that will be actually transformative for people. So as an example, one of my favorite communities is it's called Endurance Nation, and it's a bunch of runners. And every day they just have accountability groups, and they go in and they just say, oh, here's a picture, I just finished my run. And that's it. Then they talk with each other. Sometimes in between they share ideas. That whole community has one purpose. It's really just that. It's just an accountability group. I would figure out what's my version of that for my community. I would find 10, 20 people. I would tell them, hey, it's not going to be the kind of thing where we're spending all day in here. We're just here for this one thing, this 2 things. And then in a month, let's check in and let's figure out the next thing that we may want to add on to this, if we want to do something else, if it's working, right? But that's how I would approach it. And let your members do some of the work. It's a community. It's not like just telling folks what to do. It's a bottoms up kind of thing. We do it together.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect way to end this. Work together. You and I have worked together with Matt and the whole team here, and in Audience Driven, we've worked together with the audience to create this summit. It's just so much better when it's done that way. And so if you are building a community, scope it down, start smaller, and work together. And that way, those people who are involved, they can feel like they're invested in it. And that's what I always say. When you get people involved, they're invested. And right now, people want to be heard. People want to be feeling like they're important, because they are, and they want to feel like they matter. So go out there, have your people feel like they matter, bring them all into one spot, and then have them all confirm that they're all there for the right reasons, and they'll stick around and they'll do some amazing things to support your brand. So Andy, thank you so much for this. Big shout out to Circle as well for helping us get here with SPI Pro and future communities that we'll be having as well. And I hope everybody checks out Circle when you get a chance. So thank you, Andy, for your time and your wisdom today.
Thanks for having me, Pat. This has been awesome.